Welcome, Elsie. Thank you so much. Just as you were saying, this is your final webinar before your break, so we're so grateful that you're able to join us. And for those of you who don't know Elsie, she has been sharing the understanding of the principles for over 40 years. She is the first teacher, other than Sydney Banks, in this understanding. She knew him before his experience and mentored with him throughout her career. And I'm just so grateful. Elsie runs the Salt Spring School, co-founder with Chip Chipman, and that runs twice a year on Salt Spring Island, and it's wonderful. Angus and I just got back, and it's such a deep, profound experience, so highly recommend that. And I know you have a program coming up with George and Linda in September, so lots of programs, and if there's anything else you'd like to share on that, you can do that. And there's one other thing I'd like to share, because when I got the inspiration to do the Soul-Centered series, Elsie, you were the first person, first mentor that I reached out to discuss it with. And you said something at the school that reminded me of my experience, because I got the insight. And what you said at the school was you would get an insight and then you would call Sydney Banks to check it out with him. And so I got the insight. And then all of a sudden I had a whole bunch of thinking about, really, can I do that? Is that, so then I called you, Elsie. And what I so appreciated is that it felt to me that you really got the intention and the feeling behind the series, that it's not about making Sydney Banks a guru, but it is about looking toward how he shared the understanding and looking toward the teachers who learned directly from him to bring it back to the simplicity and to the profundity that's in that simplicity, and to really focus on the feeling of the understanding, the feeling of the spiritual nature of the understanding, and how we each have access to that within us. And to have a program that's really only about that. There's going to be all kinds of things that happen in people's lives, but that's really the sole focus, is for people to have a deeper experience of who they really are. And I just appreciated how much it felt like you really got the vision. So thank you. And thank you for being here today. Thank you for being in the program. And I know you have a lot to share, so I'm going to turn it over to you. And whenever you're ready to take questions, just let us know.
Okay. Thank you, Rohini. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And it's true. I read your material, but I got the feeling under the words. And that has been my saving grace over the years, is to have the feeling kind of cushion my human nature and my spiritual nature, because boy, my human nature was hanging on to the belief system I had developed for almost 30 years. And the feeling just flowed over it. Sometimes, sometimes the feeling had to just kind of wait on the sidelines for a little bit until my intellect would take a bit of a rest. And I suspect that the feeling waiting in the wings also tempered that intellect, so that I could at least feel something from Sid. I couldn't get his words for that first year and a half of resistance, but I could feel his well-being. And that's what kept me and moved me forward in the journey. And I really felt that in your offering. And as you say, Rohini, there is so much on offer in the world today based on the three principles, somewhat, all the different levels. And I mentioned this at the school again the other day, that I've really come to respect the different levels that are available in the world, because it is like a foundation, a geological foundation, with all these different levels of consciousness offering what the individual sees, and it all builds and works together to offer what the world will need, and the world will choose according to their level of consciousness. And I've learned to trust also over the years since Sid's passed that 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 the principles take care of themselves, that this spiritual energy can never be destroyed or hurt or harmed or twisted. We can try, and we do innocently, but because there's no form to this spiritual energy, it's just infinite, and it will protect itself, and it will last forever as it has. I mean, Sid said that when he first had his experience, that what he had learned as an insight about mind, consciousness, and thought has been around since the beginning of time and before, and that it was nothing new, but it came out in contemporary terms and in a contemporary world that was so in need. And I'm not a scholar. I'm not a philosophical or a psychological scholar at all. I have some religious background. And that was part of my resistance, is that my religious background came up and confronted Sid's new understanding about what this energy was, and that he, in his experience, uncovered God. And that he would say that was very disturbing to me. You know, that an ordinary man had what I thought was the temerity to say that this spiritual energy with no name and no form is what humanity tends to call God. And I tell this as an aside, and now it's funny to me, but believe me, when I had this thought in those early days, it was not amusing. And Sid would talk about God in that very profound but down-to-earth, matter-of-fact manner, when he would say to me, you know, Elsie, in your religion, I know God means something different to you, but God isn't what you think it is. And I would move away a distance from him, because in my belief system, I thought that God might strike him dead, like a bolt of lightning from the sky. And so I would want some distance between me and the man who was voicing this statement. It was just like, really, Sid? And as I say, now I can chuckle at it, and I find it endearing and rather tender-hearted. But in those days, it was serious. Like, how could a welder who had had this profound enlightenment talk in such a way? For a start, I'd never heard the word enlightenment. I didn't know there were such beings in the world that had had this kind of realization. And so to me, it was a big deal. To all of us that he was around, it was a big deal. And yet he would say at the same time, it's a simple insight. So there was that dichotomy between those of us that were gathered around him, or that he would share his insight with, considering this like a epic fantasy. And what to him was, he would say, it's just a simple insight. And so there was this dichotomy between my human nature and my spiritual nature. And it was the feeling of Sid's spiritual nature, or true nature, or well-being, whatever you want to call it. It was that feeling that continued to hold me near, and hold Ken near. And that's what I felt in your offering. If we can continue to offer the original revelation that Sid had, and the original feeling that accompanied that, the purity, the simplicity of that we all experienced as we gathered together here on Salt Spring Island, and we can offer that to the world, I wanted to be a part of that program. And I I was absolutely delighted that I got to be able to do the last one, so that increasingly, as you went through your beautiful facilitators, by the time I came on board, I felt I had just total permission from the group, because the very first evening, the Friday evening that I was invited to be with you all, and Rohini, you debriefed the group in terms of what they had learned and so on. The feeling was so deep, so loving and kind. It just opened my heart and everybody's heart. And we experienced a new word that just came to light in the last week: heartship. We experienced heartship, not just friendship, but heartship. And it was such a beautiful thing. And it brought with that heartship and open hearts permission to just let loose, and mind came through very powerfully. So the feeling was definitely something that I responded to and absorbed and contributed to, as did everybody in the group. And that you and Angus did such an incredible job of helping people feel safe from the very beginning of the program, so that could develop. You know, that feeling could develop because you were the catalyst for safety. And when people feel safe, their true nature becomes more visible, and you can feel that. And then the other thing that stands out for me in that weekend, and continues to, it just won't go away. It feels like it's such a key, a simple key to our journey. And that is to honor our wisdom, to honor what's right in our experience, in our world, rather than to focus and honor what's not. And that seems to be the link between our human nature and our spiritual nature. Our human nature, I feel, has been educated kind of from day one to look at how we can improve. How can we fix ourselves? How can we be better? How can we achieve? How can we succeed? How? Rather than I am perfect. Because I am and you are mind, consciousness, and thought. We are already perfect in our spiritual nature. And so one of the things that came out so loud and clear in a beautiful way was how we look at what's wrong. And what came through me in that beautiful permission I was given by the group was to be able to point the person that brought up what was wrong in her experience, to be able to point her back to what I heard prior to her identifying what was wrong. I heard her wisdom. I heard the fact that she came, that in itself was indication and significant of her wisdom. And so rather than spending very much time at all on what was wrong in her experience and what she wanted to fix, I swept her to her wisdom. And there was an audible response in the room when that happened with your group. The permission and the hearing and the listening was so deep that there was an audible response, like, ah. I don't know if you can hear that, but that was what happened with that group. It happened again a week later at another conference in Los Angeles, where people again were swept by the simplicity of, really, you mean It's that simple, that we can focus on what's right in our life when it appears that there's so much wrong, really? And some might doubt that. But once again, the power, the truth of that rippled through the audience and we could hear it. London, the same thing. Not even using the same examples, but just any talk that I gave, any conversation I had with people during the breaks, it was the same thing. A retired surgeon who said to me after a talk, I love the simplicity of what you're sharing, Elsie, the message that Sid has shared with the world. And he said, I retired because I had a nervous breakdown, because I was so stressed about my surgery and what it entailed and the hours I was working, 14, 16 hours a day. And so my breakdown actually was a gift because it prompted my early retirement. I uncovered my mental health through these principles, he said, and now I moved to share this. And I moved to share it within my field to the other surgeons. He said, I tried, and I had a bit of success and I had a bit of pushback. And he said, I'm not sure where to go. He said, because as I write things down, some of my, my insights that I'm turning into an offering for my field, I keep coming up with what's wrong. Like, I keep coming up with the barriers that I had, and that prevents me from going any further. And I said, don't do that. And just as I can see some smiles coming to light amongst you all, he actually doubled over. When I said, well, don't do that, he doubled over with the simplicity. And he said, really? And I knew he got it, that we didn't have to discuss that anymore as he wanted to. Like he wanted to, well, okay, well, tell me more. And I said, no, you got enough. Like the fact that you doubled over with laughter tells me you heard. You don't need any more. Just sit with that. Trust that you heard, and it'll reveal itself to you. And that's the other thing that I really saw again this weekend. And I saw in Norway. And I saw in London. It's like share and pause. It's sharing in shorthand. Trusting that when that man, that retired surgeon, doubled over with laughter, that was it. He got it. I didn't need to share anymore. I didn't need to teach anymore. I just totally trusted. He got it. And so I left him with that. I left him with that. And then again, in London, it was like someone else came up to me after a session and said, a lovely man, and he said, what is it, how do you do what you do? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I get the feeling in your session, like I picked that up, that feeling. But he said, I don't know how you do that. I'm a scientist. And he said, like, I'm a bioengineer or something like that. He said, I have a very scientific man. I've gone to a lot of self-awareness groups. I'm very sensitive to techniques. I didn't discern any technique. So how do you do what you do? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I just show up and do the best I can do to just, it's like turning on a faucet. You just show up and you serve. And everybody on this call has experienced that from one time to another, or you wouldn't be on this call. And I see, is it Kaja? Kaja. I see her very in tears and thanking. I met you in London, didn't I? I met you in London. Yes, my dear, I know, I remember you. And so I know we've all shared that. We don't know how it happens. It's something that to describe is inexpressible. And yet there it is. It comes through us. It comes out of us, through us, however you want to say it. And I left him with that too. Like I said, if you've got the feeling, my job is done. You got the feeling, that's all you need to know. And he just kind of nodded, and I could see he was still puzzled, but I wasn't prepared to go any further than that, because it was like focusing on, he had the feeling, and I respected that was enough. That is his teacher, rather than focusing on trying to explain it more in that innocent explaining, getting further and further away. So it's like those two things that keep hitting me. It's the feeling underlying our divinity. It's the feeling underlying our spiritual nature. And to rest in that, and to work to serve. I'll take back the work. To serve from that space. That's our purpose here on this planet as I see it. And it doesn't have to be serving as a practitioner. We talked about that this weekend at the school. It can be serving by sitting in your garden and loving your flowers, deadheading your flowers. It can be going to the grocery store and having a conversation with the clerk or with your neighbor. It's sharing love in the simplest way. You don't have to be a formal practitioner. It's just being like a human being, sharing our spiritual nature as a human being. And that, again, the simplicity of that, the gentleness of that, the lack of, I have to do, I have to serve. And knowing that when we're deadheading our plants, pruning our roses, we are serving, because our well-being, our spiritual nature in those moments in the living is rippling out into the world, gently, gently soothing the world, offering solace to the world without the world even knowing that, but feeling that, feeling that. The last thing I want to offer before I open for questions is I always take some time before I do a webinar or whatever I'm doing. I always am drawn to having just a little bit of time to be still. And I'm going to be doing a retreat in Costa Rica, November 2nd and 3rd. And I just got an email in this morning. And so, with some of the details and requests to talk outside of the retreat. And so it was working in my consciousness. I'm going to be talking to a cancer caregivers group and also suicide prevention group. And as I was just sitting in my easy chair with that in my consciousness, what came to mind for me is how we're so much more than our diagnosis, whatever our diagnosis might be, and whatever like physical pain we might feel from time to time. Underneath that is still our divinity that helps us heal, that helps us meet our challenges with grace and with understanding. And I observed Ken, who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 12 years ago. And at the time, you know, stage 4 is pretty heavy duty. And at the time, I got very scared. Ken was pretty matter of fact. Ken has a very deep reservoir of matter of factness. He's like the quiet man. I go blah, 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 blah. and Ken, he rests in a lot of quiet and then comes out strong. It brought forth some decisions, life decisions, that ended up like that cancer was like a gift. It turned out to be a gift because as Ken considered what might happen and that kind of thing, just looked at all kinds of alternatives, he came to the decision that he would take early retirement because he wasn't sure what would happen, and to downsize because of early retirement, that there wouldn't be the funds to continue to meet our mortgage for the big house and so on. This was somewhat distressing and concerning, but each step of the way unfolded really beautifully, that we could begin to see how we were taken care of in terms of meeting our challenges. The house sold for way more than we expected, way more than we paid. That allowed us to buy our small little retirement home, so we had no mortgage. And on and on and on, like in the most practical, unplanned way, we were taken care of. And Ken's picture, if you look in the dictionary for retirement, Ken's picture is there. Happy face. He's the picture of absolutely loving his retirement. I've never seen a more happy retired person than Ken. Never been bored in the 12 years that he's been retired, never been bored. He went through chemo, he went through all kinds of treatment. Ended up finally, after a couple of years of treatment and whatnot, had to have major surgery with a third of his bladder removed. Sailed through it. After his surgery, when he was having like tea and dry toast, it was like the best cup of tea and the best dry toast he'd ever had in his life. His attitude overrode everything else. I'm kind of, Barb has a word for, what's that word that starts with a K, Barb? Like kerflunk or something? What is it?
Ka-ching.
Ka-ching. It's another word, but it's okay.
Kerfluffle.
Yes. What was that?
Kerfluffle.
Kerfluffle, yes. That's pretty much it. Yeah. I was more in a state than Ken was as the so-called caregiver. He was the caregiver for me going through surgery. He really was. And I just saw that again and again because we had another close friend, a young woman who was going through cancer. And she really bought into it. Like, she became, I am a survivor. Ken was beyond being a survivor. He didn't want to categorize himself as I am a survivor. He is a human being. who had cancer, and now he's in remission 12 years later. I've watched him go through this, and I've never really seen anybody go through what he's gone through in the same way. Because even after his major surgery, he still had tumors that he had to have removed and in the hospital and back and this and that. I'm not saying he sailed through it with no other ill effects. He did, but now he's cancer free. I just find that remarkable. And I know he knows, he has said this, but he very rarely talks about it. It's just honoring this power that we have in us, this spiritual power to help us meet our challenges, that we are more than life challenges. And, you know, same with suicide. Like I had a sister that was in the hospital after, you know, trying to commit suicide, and my parents got to her in time. I myself had suicidal thoughts and caught myself in time, in a moment of sanity, swerved back on the road again instead of crashing into a barrier. What was that saved us? Yes, I know some don't. Some go back to God, go back to that spiritual formless energy. But there are enough in the world that have come through even attempted suicide and found life, you know, come through to the other side. As Sid says in one of his Hawaii tapes, that he didn't just have a near-death experience, which he honors, he went through to the other side. I feel that people who have had suicidal thoughts and attempted suicide, in a sense, have come up to that close to that other side, you know, have come close to a near-death experience. And if you come away from it, I know my sister never attempted suicide again. And again, I know there are all various degrees. I'm just sharing what has been real in my life experience and what I've observed and witnessed. That there's a power within us, within humanity, that the more we can honor what's right in our life rather than what's wrong, the more we will live in peace and harmony. And simply by doing that, we'll serve the world. That's how simple it is. So I'm going to pause here for a moment and
Thank you, Elsie. I think it's so beautiful how that feeling can just transmit through time, space, internet. You know, it's just so amazing how that comes through. So thank you.
I love that that can do that. That feeling can do that. It really speaks to that phrase of Sid's that I've never heard anybody else say, you know, beyond time, space, and matter. I've always resonated with that,
Absolutely.
even when I didn't understand it at all. I resonated with it. Now I get tiny little glimmers because of what you just said.
Yeah. Well, I know that there's some time if anybody would like to share a reflection, maybe how you've been impacted by what Elsie shared already. If anybody has a specific question that you'd like to ask, this is the time. Elsie's generously sharing her time, so this is really an opportunity to get to connect with her if you're interested in that. And I'll just see if anybody raises their hand. And just as a reminder, click the participants button and then the raise hand button, and I'll know that you would like to share. And we'll see how shy this group and how quickly somebody raises their hand. And oh, here we go, Julie. Hi, Julie.
Hi. Hi, Elsie.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Julie. Hug, hug.
Yes, I just really appreciate the reminder of the simplicity of the feeling doing all the heavy lifting, and that there's not really more than that. And I shared in the last soul-centered series, like a memory came up for me of when I was waitressing. I just wanted to love people, and whenever I'm with you, I just feel the simplicity of just letting the feeling do all the work and not feeling like there's anything more to do.
Wow. That's lovely. And honestly, for, you know, as a past server, you know, waitress, to say that I just want to, you know, to love the people that I served, I don't think I've ever heard a waitress say that, because usually, you know, that can be a tough job.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you to serve like that, people must have just loved you.
I hope so. I mean, I feel like what was so cool about it was how when Sid would point to the fact that people just see this because it is true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was 19 and I would see, oh, someone's coming in grumpy. That doesn't have to do with me. That's where they are. And if I love them, then maybe they'll feel better. And I would just watch that happen over and over again. So I do love the simplicity, because sometimes I can make it so complicated that I have to understand more, or I have to be more like so-and-so. And so it just helps me come back to the good feeling of how simple it really is, and that's not within my control. Like there's not more I have to do than keep coming back to that feeling, the deeper feeling.
Absolutely. And honestly, my dear, for you to have felt that and seen that at 19, oh my goodness. When I think of when I was 19, it was like it was all over the place. And if somebody had come into my table as a waitress, grumpy, I'd have probably, you know, been grumpy right back. And so any other thoughts you might hang on to now and then, you know, about you need more, just flick that away. Because I remember you and Dawn the very first day of the weekend that we spent together with Rohini and Angus. I mean, you lit up the room, you two.
Thank you.
So, you know, just stop that other nonsense.
Yeah, and just that you can, like you said to that guy, just stop it. That was, I love it. Yeah, thank you.
Embrace your beauty.
Thank you. Thank you, Elsie.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks so much, Julie. So if anybody else would like to share. You know, I was also struck, and I'll just share until someone raises their hand. As soon as someone raises their hand, I'll stop. But I was really struck this weekend too, Elsie, by the simplicity and the realization that I didn't need to to do anything,
You
that,
don't need buttons
that
at
the
the bottom.
learning, sorry, there's some background noise here,
Whoops.
that the learning is just unfolding without me having to do it.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, James, did you want to share? Hang on, you're muted. One second.
Okay.
There we go. There you are, James.
Elsie, I
Hi,
want to thank
James.
you for that great career that I've been observing all these many years. And it was wonderful hearing you talk and share tonight. This morning. And the thoughts that were coming to me, not if thoughts have value, but is the idea that we are the thinkers. And it's through our thoughts that we create how we feel at any given moment. And I appreciate you talking about living the simple life and how that was also valid sharing and would allow the world to grow and allows all the individuals that practice it to grow. Anyway, Elsie, thanks again. Beautiful experience.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, James. When you mentioned to grow, it reminded me of something that came up this weekend. Again, speaking to what we focus on, like if we focus on what's right, on our healthy thoughts, that energy makes it grow. And likewise, if we focus that energy on our unhealthy thoughts, it makes that grow. And for some reason, fertilizer came to mind. I guess because I've been fertilizing my hanging baskets and whatnot, and seeing the growth from that formless energy is like fertilizer. That's what struck me this weekend. It's like fertilizer. And for us to use it wisely, like we wouldn't put fertilizer on dandelions, would we? We wouldn't put fertilizer on weeds.
Yeah.
Put the fertilizer on our roses and our hanging baskets and flowers to enhance them and make them grow. And it just struck me sort of the physicality of this formless energy, seeing the oneness of it, that it's formless, and yet we use that energy to make things grow.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, James. Thanks, Elsie. Next person whose hand is raised is Dror, but I am going to read a comment from Laura because she's not able to share before I go to Dror. It says, Rohini, please share with Elsie how honored I am to be able to listen to her share. My heart skipped a beat when she said, after all these years of understanding, that she had a glimpse of something. Imagine that, still glimpsing.
Still glimpsing?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, yes. Thank you. Is it Laura?
Laura Jones.
Laura Jones, thank you for that. I'm honored that you're on this program listening. Because I'm honored you're here. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I love that we never stop. Like an old timer like myself and some of couple of the people here from the island that were around from the very beginning, we're old timers. We've been around this for 45 years and we're still having insights. Oh my goodness. I have no words. I have no words. I just utter gratitude because we're still learning. And also in Vancouver, Karen and Mark, that we're still learning. This is what keeps us young fogies, us old fogies young. Pardon me, guys. It's my last webinar. If I'm twisting my words, just forgive me, because I'm moving out into La La Land a little bit here. So you might have to come with me. But that's it. It keeps us old fogies young because we're still learning. We're not locked into, we know it all.
And I think young fogies is a good word.
Young fogies. That's good. That's good.
All right. I'm going to unmute you, Dror. Hi, Dror.
Hi, everybody. Trying to put my less distracting glasses.
Oh, there you are. Hi.
Hi.
Tell me your wife's name.
Julie.
Who?
Julie.
Oh, Julie. Okay, I knew you were a couple. One of you. I wasn't sure if it was you and Julie or you and Dawn.
Yeah, we all sometimes get confused.
It's you two couples. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're lovely.
Thank you, Elsie. My question is around feelings, and it's funny. I guess I still, even though it's several years since you cracked me with that notion that I used to think that my lower thoughts follow my lower moods, and you kind of got it clear for me. But what I'm finding recently, something that I go kind of around, is kind of to distinguish between, just all kind of thoughts that are running through my head and some things that are kind of like deeper, that I feel like, oh, that's wisdom and I want to act upon it. And last weekend I was at a 3P pop-up event that was awesome with Jackie Ford. And something that was said there really kind of triggered that thought, doubt, distinguishing. People were talking about all kind of thoughts, and Jackie said something to the degree like, if my feeling always follow thoughts, I don't always trust my feeling. And I'm like, that's interesting. Because I really got to the point to really, when I'm trying to distinguish between what you called me on the social and serious, like trash thoughts or junk thoughts, or just thoughts that I can totally ignore. The thing, I would go to the feeling and see how does it feel. If I want to make a decision, if I have a thing, I know my mind's going to keep working. So whatever. And I guess in my past, I used to work way more out of my gut's feeling, and I was less rational. I think when I was younger, I wouldn't think things through or overthink things through, to be more accurate. So around that, Sunday I was like, oh, if my feelings follow my thoughts, and I cannot always trust my feeling, what is that good feeling that I trust? And I have places in my life that usually when I would be out in nature or walking or be completely not engaged in my thoughts around something that I need to do, that I know that some, I would call it a download or something happened that I knew that's it. I knew that I need to do that. I don't know where it come from, but it just was something that I had this knowing that I didn't need to think through anything. Some big decisions in life. But especially around my work, I tend to get very excited on some things, and then I have great thoughts coming up. And then also find that it's hard for me to distinguish between anxiety and excitement sometimes. It feels the same.
Anxiety and what?
Anxiety and excitement. They feel sometimes, my mind is at the same state of mind, I guess, when I have...
Can I intervene right here?
Yeah.
I think I've got the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got the flavor. I feel you already answered yourself within that. Okay. You really know the answer. You tell me, what's the answer to your question?
I don't know.
You do know. You said it. You said it in the midst of that, the rhetoric you just shared with us.
Oh, you say when something that I would know, they would just come out of when I was not engaged in thought around it, and the knowing comes through.
There you go. I rest my case. Honestly, you've got it. You nailed it. It's sometimes we do that. We let other people's wisdom override ours. Mm-hmm. And that's theirs. Listen to yourself. I can't say that enough. Listen to yourself. And when I heard you describe that knowing, and it just comes from nowhere, I knew you knew. Mm-hmm. And I trust that in you. Honor that. The only other thing I'm going to suggest to you is stop trying to figure it out so much. And I love that you're smiling.
I get that a lot of time when I don't have to figure it out, the answer comes up. I get that. I totally get that.
There you go.
But part of me, the analytical mind, it's work. I also not trying to control it. Sometimes it's just working.
Yeah, it is just working. And that's it. When you hear yourself saying but, stop right there. Don't go any further. As soon as you voice but, that's your signal.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great question. And I love your knowing.
Thank you.
I honor that.
Thank you, Tor.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So next we'll go to Claire Painter.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Elsie. Hi, Rohini. So I want to come back to the surgeon because I didn't sort of bend over laughing. So I'm not sure I do get it. I think I do, but I just wanted to double check. So you mentioned that he wanted to share, I suppose, what he'd discovered since retiring, and his barriers were getting in the way. So is that, do you mean that he was fearful, or that his mind was blocking what he sensed in his spirit? I'm just wondering what those barriers might have been.
That's a fair question, Claire, and thank you for bringing it up for more clarification. What I meant by that, and what he said to me, was that it was the thoughts he was attributing to the other surgeons that he wanted to serve. He was putting himself back in the resistance mode by coming up with all the barriers why this wouldn't work, this understanding, these principles wouldn't work as a surgeon. And so he kept bringing up those thoughts as barriers to him being able to serve, instead of looking at, see, if you can look at, I've been in this field, and so I understand where they're stuck, and I can help them find balance mentally, and perhaps then even physically find balance between their work life and their life. If he can do that, or someone can do that neutrally, that's one thing. He wasn't able to do that neutrally. He put weight on it. So when he went back there to the field, he was assuming his old identity, and then he got stuck along with the surgeons. Do you see the difference?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
That's great. A great question, because when I have worked in an area of business or whatever, and I've known nothing about the business I've been invited to, I listen, and I get a flavor of what the people are up against, what they're struggling with, but I'm not attached to what they're struggling with. And then I can see how to introduce the principles in a relevant way that will help diminish and eliminate the struggle. And that makes a big difference, that you don't take on the struggles of whatever environment you're going into. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you, Claire. We have Kathy who has her hand raised. Let me unmute you, Kathy. Hi, Kathy.
Hi there. Elsie, I wanted to just thank you especially today for talking so simply and clearly about your experience of God and your comfort at this point in time to be speaking to 100 people. And in a way, it's a bit of ordinary magic. We're connected by technology. And it's a gift to have you come into my house for tea today.
Aw.
So thank you.
Oh, you look wonderful, Kathy.
Today, I could have done it yesterday. It wouldn't have been that way.
Oh, dear. However, you look wonderful today, and it's lovely to have a cuppa with you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thanks, Kathy.
And that was the other thing, you know, I discovered more deeply that love is limitless. It was my last big conference in London, and there were a little over 1,000 people there. And part of the reason why is because I want to slow my life down, not travel as much. And frankly, I'm drawn to smaller groups, to work with smaller groups. There's a different kind of energy with the large conferences. They're doing an amazing job. And when you think of it, like 1,000 people, 40 countries, I'm so moved by that. For me personally, been there, done that. And so I did wonder, I thought, you know, I love smaller groups like the retreats that I do of 40, 50 people. I feel like I can wrap my arms around them and give them all a cuddle. There's an intimacy that I love. Darned if I didn't find that same intimacy with 1,000 people. That when I did that last talk, I felt so much love in that room. And I literally was able to stretch my arms and my love and wrap my arms around 1,000 people. And I really felt that, you know, this love that we all have inside of us, that is that spiritual energy, it's limitless. We have enough love for the whole world. And having said that, I still am delighted that I'm gonna, you know, do the smaller retreats and have a bit of a quieter life as I move into this new chapter that I don't know what it is, but I feel it. I feel it's a good thing. And every step of this forward movement into doing less has been inspired by mind, consciousness, and thought.
That's lovely. Elsie, I have one person with their hand raised. Can you take one more question? And that'll
Yes,
be the final one.
absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Maya, you'll be the last question. I'm unmuting you. Hi, Maya.
Hi.
Where's
Hi, everyone.
oh, there you are. Hi.
First of all, thank you so much. Thank you for your
Oh,
generosity. I just shared with Rohini, you know, previously. I just feel the love from all the people that I've been, you know, tuning to, you know, on this, you know, from this understanding, and that, you know, really warms my heart. My question is, I've experienced some physical challenges like aches, you know, like back strain. And this morning I woke up with a little, you know, gentle strain in the neck. And there was a feeling of kind of not listening. You know, like I felt like a sense of disappointment, you know, when I woke up and I felt the strain. And it felt like I was not like noticing what my body needs maybe, and then as a result, you know, it's kind of signaling this way, and so I invited myself to be more, I guess, gentle and not so I guess rigid with and it's funny, you know, because the flexibility, you know, like it's playing out. But my question is, you know, like when I feel a sense of dis-ease physically.
when you feel a sense of what?
Of dis-ease.
Oh,
right?
dis-ease.
Like strain,
yes.
physically. And then a thought comes up about what it's related to, what it might, like, you know, my mind is trying to figure out, okay, what am I missing? Similar to what, you know, Draw a little bit was saying, trying to figure it out. And I am trying to stop, you know, trying to figure it out, but more to kind of tune to what the body is trying to, like what the wisdom is trying to communicate here. Like, what's my opportunity? with no attachment, you know, not to try to, okay, oh, now I understand, so now I'm going to go and get on it, you know, to kind of be a little bit more slow in the application, but more attuned to be observing of what's present. So my question is like, what's a way to do that in a more, I don't know, in more loving, graceful, you know, honoring way? Because I loved what you shared about honoring the power within. I feel that we all have the power and the wisdom, but I don't always know how to tune to that and trust that the answer will come, you know, like the solution or the whatever it is that will support me in the moment will come through.
Gosh, I think you've just, honestly, you know you're already doing it. What you've said is that you realize that you need to pay more attention to those aches and pains and what your body is telling you, that you realize you need to honor that more, that you're aware of it. That awareness is consciousness, so consciousness is guiding you. Mind is guiding you, thought is guiding you. Like you're already doing without doing. It's just that little piece of intellect still trying to figure it out. So again, I'm going to say, just let that slip away and honor the fact that you're already doing, oh my goodness, the most beautiful thing by being attentive to your body, honoring your body, seeing that it's a gift. This is something I've been looking at and growing to understand more myself the last 8 months or so, is seeing that my body has been telling me, because I wasn't listening, kind of to mind, saying, you know, slow it down, take care of your body, honor serving self. And by self, I mean the big self with the big S, not the little self so much, but the big self. Listen. And when I wasn't listening to mind, divine mind, then my body started to have aches and pains as kind of like a further pointing to slow down, take care of yourself. And I've gone in and out of that. I'll be honest with you. I've gone in and out of that. But more and more, I've grown to accept it's a blessing. It's been a gift for me to slow down and to lose some of my pride about what I've been experiencing, using a cane from time to time because I've needed to, getting some help, asking for help, and honoring my body in a way that I hadn't before, honoring the kindness and gentleness and love that the world is showing me because of this gift of these aches and pains and certain physical things that I need to attend to. So when I hear you describe that, I hear you doing that. Good for you. Do more of that and less of the thinking about it.
Yeah.
You're right on track.
Or more be with it.
What's that?
More about being with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Maya. Well, thank you, Elsie, for spending this time, especially right before you take time off for the summer. It's been such a rich, delicious, gorgeous experience of being in that feeling of love. Thank you.
Well, I've loved it. Honestly, I really have enjoyed it. I've loved seeing your faces, familiar faces on there. I've loved seeing the different expressions come and go in your faces. It's been an absolute joy to do this. And Rohini and Angus, thank you again for inviting me to do this and to be part of your next, and I know last, soul-centered series. And I heartily recommend it. Honestly, if you can join one way or another, either virtually or in person, it's a wonderful, wonderful program.
Oh, thank you, Elsie.